Ever wonder what it was really like to be a kid in Victorian Britain? Well, let me tell you. You'd probably run screaming back to your own childhood after hearing this. Today, we're diving into 20 shocking ways British parents and teachers used to discipline their children. And trust me, some of these are absolutely wild. Before we start, remember, this was a time when people genuinely believed that children were born with, quote, inherent evil tendencies that needed to be beaten out of them. Yeah, let's get into it. Number 20. The cane. Now, this wasn't just any stick. Victorian teachers used canes made from birch wood, and oh boy, were they particular about how to use them. Boys got caned on their backsides, bare backsides, by the way, while girls were struck on their bare legs or hands. According to punishment records from Nether Stowey School in 1910, children received anywhere from 1 to 6 strokes for minor offences. And get this, in that single year, 97 boys and 25 girls were caned. Some kids appeared in the punishment book repeatedly, meaning the deterrent clearly wasn't working, but they kept doing it anyway. Number 19. The absurd reasons. You think you got in trouble for silly things? Victorian kids could be caned for being rude, answering back, speaking out of turn, laziness, lying, leaving the classroom without permission, or, my personal favorite, poor work. One 11-year-old boy named Oswald Baker was thrashed with a stick by his schoolmaster in 1893. Why? He ran away to attend a policeman's funeral that his own mother said he could attend. The next morning, the teacher beat him so badly that he had bruises measuring 3 inches by 2.5 inches on his leg. When the case went to court, the bench dismissed it, saying, the boy deserved to be punished. Number 18. The dunce cap. Now here's something you've probably seen in movies, but the reality was way more brutal. This tall, cone-shaped hat, usually made from old newspaper and decorated with a big letter D, was placed on children who couldn't keep up with their lessons. Here's what makes this particularly cruel. Victorian teachers had zero understanding of learning disabilities, different learning speeds, or even that kids learn in different ways. If you struggled, you were just considered lazy or rebellious. Charles Dickens mentioned the dunce cap in The Old Curiosity Shop in 1840, describing it so casually that historians know it was already common practice by then. Kids would sit in the corner wearing this thing for an hour or more, sometimes standing on a stool so everyone could see their shame. Number 17. Punishment baskets. Okay, this one sounds like something from a horror movie. Some Victorian schools actually had wicker baskets that were suspended from the ceiling by ropes and pulleys. When a child misbehaved, they'd be made to climb into the basket, and then they'd be hoisted up so they were just hanging there, dangling from the ceiling, while everyone else continued their lessons. Like the dunce cap, this was designed purely for embarrassment. The idea was that the child would be so humiliated that they'd magically start behaving better. Spoiler alert, psychological trauma wasn't really on their radar back then. Number 16. Writing lines. Now, this one might sound familiar, but the Victorian version was intense. Children had to write out the same sentence over 100 times without making a single mistake. And if you made even one tiny error, you'd have to start completely over and probably face additional punishment. Remember, they were writing with dip pens and ink from inkwells. No erasers, no crossing out, just perfect, identical copperplate handwriting, over and over and over. Your hand would be cramping, ink would be everywhere, but you couldn't stop until it was perfect. Number 15. The War on Left-Handers. This one is particularly shocking. Victorian society believed that being left-handed was literally a curse, something sinister, abnormal, and wrong. Teachers would tie left-handed children's hands behind their backs, force them to write with their right hands, or even beat their left hands with canes and rulers to train them out of it. One woman who attended a Methodist school remembered teachers slamming books onto left-handed children's fingers. Historical data shows that among people born in 1900, only 3% were left-handed, compared to 11% today. That's not genetics. That's forced suppression. Number 14. Boxing the ears. This was so common it barely needed explanation at the time. Teachers, governesses, and even servants were allowed to box children's ears, essentially slapping them hard on the side of the head. Albert Graves, a member of the Victorian gentry, wrote in his book that his governess boxed the boys' ears when they damaged some chairs in the classroom. Agnes Hunt recalled in her autobiography that the children in her household actually held a meeting to discuss what they could do about the number of people who were allowed to beat them. Their mother broke up the meeting before they could organize their rebellion. Number 13. Locked in closets. For families that didn't physically strike their children, they had other methods. Middle and upper-class Victorian parents would lock misbehaving children in closets or dark rooms for hours at a time. This wasn't just a quick time-out. We're talking about being locked in cramped, dark spaces with no idea when you'd be let out. In an era before electricity, these closets would be pitch black. The psychological impact was the point. They wanted children to sit in the dark and think about what they'd done. Number 12. Cold baths for character training. Here's one that sounds almost modern, except for the reasoning. Victorian middle-class families believed that bathing in cold water built moral character and discipline. According to historical records, creating a routine of cold baths was considered an effective way of promoting good health, cleanliness, respectability, and perhaps even character training. Nothing says good parenting like forcing your kids into freezing water to build their character, right? This wasn't about hygiene. It was deliberate discomfort as a form of discipline. Number 11. The backboard. If a child didn't sit up straight enough in class, teachers would strap a wooden board to their back, forcing them to maintain rigid posture for hours. Imagine sitting at your desk all day with a board pressed against your spine, unable to slouch or even relax for a moment. This was documented in punishment records from various Victorian schools. The board would dig into their backs, making every lesson a physical ordeal on top of the mental challenge of learning. Number 10. Finger stocks. Now we're getting into the creative territory. If a child was caught fidgeting in class, their fingers could be tied together behind their backs using wooden finger stocks. These were miniature versions of the medieval stocks you've seen in movies. Your fingers would be clamped in the wood, making it impossible to write, impossible to eat, and pretty much impossible to do anything except sit there in pain while the lesson continued around you. Number 9. Reformatory schools. Set up in 1854 for young offenders under 16, these places were absolutely brutal. They were described in official records as very tough places with stiff discipline enforced by frequent beatings. Children were sent there for several years, not months, years. And get this, a young offender would typically start their sentence with a brief spell in an adult prison first, before being transferred to the Reformatory. The National Archives described these institutions as places where physical punishment was routine and severe. Number 8. Workhouse horrors. Poor children who ended up in workhouses faced some of the worst treatment. According to witness statements from 1834, children in the Wandsworth and Clapham Union Workhouse were beaten illegally by masters and mistresses. One 8-year-old boy and a girl were documented as being beaten, which actually broke the rules even then. But the staff were well aware of what the rules were and actively tried to cover up their behavior. Children in workhouses were separated from their families, forbidden to speak to each other, and sometimes didn't even have beds, just blankets on cold floors. Number 7. Shame cards around the neck. In schools that used the Lancasterian system, monitors would give misbehaving pupils cards to wear around their necks, with messages like, "I have seen this boy idle," or "I have seen this boy talking." The child would have to wear this card all day while their peers mocked them. According to historical records, wearing this card around the neck was not a badge of honor as it may be viewed today. Rather, it was seen as shameful among the pupils' peers. Public humiliation was considered an effective teaching tool. Number 6. The wooden log. For repeat offenders in Lancasterian schools, Joseph Lancaster proposed that a wooden log be attached to the child's leg. They'd have to drag this weight around all day, every day, until the teacher decided they'd learned their lesson. Can you imagine trying to walk around, sit at your desk, use the bathroom with a heavy log chained to your ankle? This was considered progressive education for its time. Number 5. Solitary confinement for children. Some Victorian schools had special rooms where misbehaving children would be locked away on their own for hours or even days. This wasn't just about isolation. These rooms were often cold, dark, and deliberately uncomfortable. Records show that children could be placed in solitary confinement for offenses as minor as talking in class or not completing their work on time. The psychological impact of being locked away alone as a child, well, they didn't really care about that back then. Number 4. Standing until you drop. Victorian children could be made to stand facing a wall or in a corner for hours at a time. Not sitting, standing. Their legs would be shaking, their feet would be aching, but they had to remain perfectly still and silent. Some children were made to stand for entire school days. If they sat down, leaned against the wall, or moved too much, the clock would reset and they'd start over. This form of punishment could last so long that children would literally collapse from exhaustion. Number 3. Withholding food. As a form of punishment, Victorian parents and institutions would deny children meals. Not just dessert, entire meals. Children could be sent to bed without dinner, or made to sit at the table watching others eat while they got nothing. In workhouses and reformatory schools, this was combined with hard labor. Imagine being a kid, doing physical work all day, and then being told you don't get to eat because you broke some arbitrary rule. The cruelty was the point. Number 2. The biblical justification. Here's what made all of this possible. Victorian society genuinely believed in the phrase, "spare the rod and spoil the child." This came from their interpretation of the Bible, and it meant that not beating your children was seen as bad parenting. One Victorian father was recorded saying about his son, "It is better that he should be punished in this world whilst he is a little boy than grow up to be a liar and thief and go to hell when he dies." They literally thought they were saving children's souls by beating them. The psychological and physical abuse wasn't seen as abuse at all. It was considered moral duty. And number 1, the most shocking part? The complete acceptance of it all. When children were punished at school, parents would often give them even more punishment at home. Parents never questioned teachers' actions. They automatically assumed their child deserved whatever happened to them. Victorian parents were described as generally not known for showing much affection. Children were expected to be seen and not heard, to speak only when spoken to, and to address their fathers as Sir. The idea that children had feelings worth considering, that they deserved compassion or understanding, that they were individuals with rights, none of that existed. According to historical records, if parents found out their child was punished at school, they'd often inflict additional physical punishment at home to make sure the lesson stuck. So there you have it. 20 shocking ways British parents used to discipline their kids. And before anyone comments, kids were more respectful back then, let me remind you that punishment records show children were repeatedly punished for the same behaviors, meaning none of this actually worked. The good news? This stuff was gradually banned. Corporal punishment was finally outlawed in state schools in 1987 and in private schools in England by 1999. It took until 2005 for the final legal challenges to be rejected. Today, we understand that children learn better through positive reinforcement, that learning disabilities are real, that left-handedness isn't a curse, and that traumatizing kids doesn't build character, it just builds trauma. Progress is real, folks. If you found this fascinating and disturbing in equal measure, hit that like button. Subscribe for more dark history content. And hey, next time you think your parents were strict, just be grateful you weren't born in Victorian Britain. Thanks for watching, and remember, history is worth learning so we never repeat it.